And here we are for an unexpected episode of Dualistic Unity Raw. It is Wednesday morning, not Sunday morning. And it's so funny how we get caught up in cycles to the point where I woke up to my own alarm this morning and I couldn't figure out why the hell I was getting up. And I'm going through my head going, I did this to myself, obviously. Obviously, I set the alarm and a second alarm just to make sure I followed it. So there's a reason for this. So I got up and then it dawned on me, oh right, we got an episode of Raw. But it was just so funny because we're so used to cycles. I'm so used to cycles. I'm just like, this doesn't feel right. It feels like I'm doing something in the wrong place. And isn't it funny how easy it is to get pulled into that idea that there is a right or a wrong place just out of familiarity? Just out of familiarity. And so I am happy to say that I'm awake. I'm having a good morning. I just watched a video on TikTok that just it's everything that I don't want to come across in Dualistic Unity. It really is. This is a test. This is a test. Humanity is being tested. I wrote down some of this shit. Hold on. The ones that fail, no, there will be ones that fail and there will be ones that succeed. The test is instant gratification. So, give up your caffeine and your vaping and your cannabis, and you know better. You know it's weakening you. Why would you? It's wrong to do that. And this is this is the point of the video is that you got to get over this. You got to be disciplined. You got to want that change. You got to, oh my God. There was so much about that. And it's like, okay, hold on. First of all, the idea that, there will be some who fail this and some who succeed. There will be, we will either change into like a utopia or descend into idiocracy. If you don't live by this very controlled right way that I have decided is the way I'm going to live. And it's like, you don't hear how all of what you're saying, the core of what you're saying is the bad habit. Like it is the habit that this is all coming from. It is, in fact, why we're falling into quote unquote idiocracy, if there is a such thing, simply because we're all going, you need to change instead of looking at ourselves. Because we're all judging everyone else because we're judging ourselves. Like all I hear from this poor person is that they're really not enjoying themselves. And then what's worse is the video ends, well, that all in mind. Remember, you've got to be happy first. Be happy. It's like, you don't sound happy. Like if you were happy, you wouldn't be out here just bitching about how the world is falling apart, because don't get me wrong. It's not like things aren't falling apart to some degree, but it doesn't mean you have to be unhappy. That's just because we overinvest in things that have a shaky foundation. That's just the nature of things. Right. But yeah, there was just so much to that video. And I shared it with Andrew before we started this. So I'm going to pass it over to him.
Yeah, it was very interesting to hear because it went on for, I don't know, I felt like a few minutes, might have been less, but it seemed like there was a certain track at first, and then there was a point where it was like it kind of could have ended and it would have been fine, but then it was like something inside was like, wait, I don't know if I said that how I wanted to say it. And then it was just like continuation and continuation and continuation, just like, that type of situation where say you have to give a 3-minute talk and you're only prepared for 1 minute worth of talking. And then you just got to keep talking. And it's like, they're kind of start being related, but then there's parts that are forgotten. And I think that's part of the issue with something like that, where there's so many rules is if there's a few things left out, it's like all of a sudden it doesn't make as much sense. And so the happiness thing was brought in at the end after all the, it's the test is instant gratification and you got to do this and you got to avoid this, avoid this, avoid this. Cause if you do, you're bad and you're wrong. And basically saying like, if you do these things, you're going to be unhappy. You almost like you deserve to be unhappy. You should be unhappy because who's to say you can't utilize some cannabis, be a little bit less certain and be happy? But no, if you're doing cannabis, it's bad, it's wrong for you, and you know that you're doing something wrong. And so therefore, you shouldn't be happy. And so it's so convoluted in the sense that if you are happy and smoking weed, it's like you're not actually. You're suppressing something inside. You couldn't possibly be happy. It's like this whole convoluted thing. Like first and foremost, and that was the most interesting part about the end being like, and above all else, you have to be happy. You can't be happy until you can't find happiness until you're happy yourself, and then you'll find it. It's like, wait, but I'm just choosing it right now. So wait, what's there to find? And then what about all those other things? What if I'm doing those things and I'm still happy? And like this whole kind of back and forth. And I felt like I was just, I don't know what movie it's from where the person's just getting like smacked back and forth. And then it's like two people smacking them because it's two different points of view, two different perspectives, kind of like going hand in hand or going together. And so there's one thing said, and then it's kind of followed, but also a little bit contradicted in a certain way. So then it's like you get smacked one way and then you get smacked another way. And I was like, I don't even know which way is up at this point. There's been like 75 rules, whereas, and it's all based on control. You can control how you feel. You can control, you just do the right things and then you'll feel this way, as opposed to stop having such a strong opinion about how you feel, and then that shifts, and feeling like you can be so sure of it. Like it's all this white knuckling to get to peace, to get to happiness, and following all these things, following all these rules, following all these ways to be happy that they know is how to be happy, as they're yelling at people about what to do and what not to do. And if you're really like having just a grand old day, just having a really good time. It's like, how many times do you pick up your phone and start screaming at it about what people should and shouldn't be doing? Like it's kind of clear that that's not the case, and yet step one that was added in towards the end is to be happy first. So yeah, it was all over the place. I was like, I don't even know what there is. Can I get this in an email or something? Because I'm not able to track all the rules here at this point.
My favorite part of the whole thing, and it's the very end of the video. After all of that, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. If you don't do this, you know you're wrong. How could you do this? Why would you keep doing this? Obviously, you're going to suffer, and you're going to continue to suffer. Not only are you going to suffer, the world is going to go to hell in a handbasket because of you. But I love you. It was so Old Testament. It was fucking so good. Like, if you want to hear the mentality of God of the Old Testament, there it is. There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And if you don't do it the right way, fuck you. But I love you.
Yeah, the gaslighting back and forth. It's all your fault if you don't do it, but also I have love and I care deeply about you. And that's why I'm making this video. I'm actually making this video being so frustrated and angry because of how much I care. And I'm doing it all for you. And how funny is that, from the perspective of the world needing to be saved and me being the one that has to do it, it's like, oh, my burden to bear, my cross to bear, to save the world and sacrifice myself. And that's what we do, in the sense of I need to get angry at everyone else, like suffering or dying, like people wanting to be Jesus in a sense, like dying for everyone else's sins. Like, I'm going to do all of these things, follow Jesus. What would Jesus do? Be disciplined and judgmental and carry out God's will and God's word in order to save everyone else, despite doing very little of any of that, having very little impact, because it stems from being about you, even if you're saying I'm sacrificing. Because why? To get to heaven in paradise and, hang out with all your favorite people for the rest of your life. And how much it still stems from me and what's best for me. And then so it's like people are willing to be angry, frustrated. Oh, I got to be this way in order to get this across, or else no one's going to listen to me. No one's going to pay attention. Blah, 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 blah. Like, oh, goodness gracious. Don't have to.
You know, avoid instant gratification because it's not satisfying at all to think that you know the right way to live and to tell people what to do. Oh my God. I'm just like, you understand this feels super satisfying, right? And it does, and it's total instant gratification. That's what the ego boost is. That's what that sense of control is. That's what that sense of false certainty is. Instant fucking gratification. Or you can call it cognitive dissonance. Right? It's the same thing. You're just making yourself feel better. In this case, it's this person trying to make themselves feel better, but not, come across that way. Right? And you can see why they want to make themselves feel better. Like they're so rigid. There's so much of a, we got to do this. It's super serious. It's time to buckle down, boys and girls. Like, fucking, oh my God. It's like, relax, relax. And this is the thing is that all of the things that he's vilifying are things that at some point he'll more than likely try out of fucking necessity. He's saying the path that you're on in terms of seeking instant gratification while he does the same thing in terms of judgment and control, right, is going to destroy you. And he's in that cycle, not hearing the words that he's saying, not actually recognizing the underlying message that, yeah, it's on you. But that means you're still giving power to these substances. Like if you're to be like, you have to avoid cannabis, you have to avoid, caffeine, you have to avoid vaping, you have to avoid all of these things that weaken you. They weaken you. It's like, well, what weakens you more? Avoiding them, being afraid of them, or being able to accept them and use them with responsibility? Because it sounds like holding them off and going, oh my God, they're evil. That sounds pretty fucking weak. Whereas, being able to accept it, being able to use things responsibly and with awareness, that takes strength and clarity, right? And integrity. But he's just looking for an easy way out, which again, instant gratification, right? There's a right way and a wrong way. It's very black and white. It's like, wow, that must feel really nice to have things figured out that way.
Oh, the certainty in it is mind blowing. How sure it's like this is definitely the case, and this is definitely going to happen in this way. And it is very interesting, the conversation about certain things having certain impact over, your auric. Someone commented once, your auric field is gonna be hijacked or something like that. Careful. It was in reference to weed also. It's like, careful with all that weed use, your auric field is going to be hijacked. And my response was like, first of all, what is that? It sounds like a car or something. I was like, what the fuck are you even talking about? And then they went on about yeah, some fucking voodoo shit, or else I'm gonna twist the arm of your voodoo doll that I have sitting in my attic. And so anyway, yeah, the auric field. And then so they're literally in that moment being afraid of something, having power over them. It's like we discount how much our experience is just right now. Like, am I afraid, or do I have faith in myself? Like, am I worried about this thing having influence over me? And if that's the case, as you said, like, has it not already had influence over you? Like, is it not having influence over you the moment that you're afraid of it, the moment that you're worried about it, the moment that you're saying, don't do this, you can't do this, avoid this? Is this not just you? Because we're always just talking to ourselves, saying, I can't do this, I can't handle this, I can't deal with this. And if I were to be faced with these things, then I wouldn't be able to handle it. Like, that's all that he's really saying is, I can't handle this. I can't handle this. And so we'll point to
Therefore,
certain
you
things.
can't.
Exactly. Because if I can't, you definitely can't, because I'm better than you. Oh goodness, that a lot's coming out in this right here. But how immediately disempowering it is, as soon as we're even like, oh, with something like weed, like, oh, I gotta take a break from weed. It's having this powerful impact over me. It's making me do these things, making me not do these things, making me this, making me that. It's like, in that there's power given off to it. And so, as opposed to, you could, in a situation where you feel like that's the case, instead of looking at the weed, look at yourself and wonder, well, what am I doing that's allowing for that? Am I taking responsibility for this experience, or am I passing it off to the weed? And that's one of the most interesting parts of cannabis, I think, is just how much it requires responsibility. But if there doesn't want to be responsibility taken, then there's almost going to be a ramification immediately from just the resistance or the passing off or whatever it may be. But as soon as you're like, no, I got this, I'm dealing with this, I'm dealing with that, and this is just sort of amplifying that experience, it shifts the experience immediately. Like it's not bigger than you. It doesn't have more power than you do. As soon as something is ingested or done, it's like all of a sudden you're contorted into this thing and controlled by the thing. It's like passing off, even saying like something has control over you. Basically saying that too. So yeah, it's funny though. As soon as we're afraid of something, saying that it will have this influence, it's like the influence has already taken place.
Yeah. So all of that, 20 minutes of unpacking that, and you could see why I just couldn't stop laughing. Like I just couldn't stop laughing. And it's just because you can see the circle we get caught in. I want out of this so badly. I'm going to dig in more. And it's just because we don't recognize what digging in is. We don't recognize what we're digging into. He's looking at these bad habits, not recognizing that all of those quote unquote bad habits are kind of coping mechanisms for the state of control that he's in, right? And perpetuating. And so it's like, recognize what's happening, but that's to actually have to recognize that control is an illusion. That control is not something you can actually have, but it is something you can believe in. And that's where he's stuck. And so it was really interesting. And I'm glad that you got to watch it. I'm not going to give the person a call out on the podcast because that would just be kind of harsh, admittedly. But if you're listening to the podcast and this is you, no judgment. Again, we're not saying that there's a right or a wrong way. What we're doing is just talking about what it is you're doing, and what it is you're caught in, because frankly, it's the same thing we're doing, same thing we're caught in. Same thing we desperately try to avoid in each and every episode and each and everything that we release on social media is not to tell people we know what the right way to live is. Because we don't know the right way to live. I don't know the right way to live for me. Therefore, how can I know the right way to live for everybody else? I am continuously informed by my life, by my existence. I am continuously growing. So if I have this set idea of what life is all about, that's not letting me grow. I'm not taking in any new information. I'm not shifting my position at all. It'd be like you holding on to the beliefs you had when you were 12. Can you imagine still operating in the world with the beliefs you had when you were 12? It'd make things a little bit difficult, right? Especially given all the new considerations. Imagine getting in your car without any of the things you've learned after to the age of 12 years old. That'd be very difficult to drive. So just keep that in mind. It's just about moving forward. We have a question, by the way, in the comment section, which I think is great. So is the idea of myself something that I'm trying to get rid of, or is it more that I don't have to abide by that idea? Okay, so that's a really good question. I like how you put that. It's not something you have to abide by. That said, why? And I would say it's just because your idea of yourself is never the truth. That's it. It's not that you're not going to form one. You're always going to form one. Whenever you're like, how am I doing? Idea of yourself pops up, right? It's pretty much it. Takes that long. Not even that long. It's just sitting there, right? But to recognize like, oh, that's interesting. That's how I think I'm doing, right? Opens you up to other possibilities of how you might be doing. And if there's other perspectives of how you might be doing, then none of them are the total truth. And all of them have some merit, but none of them are what is. And so it's just recognizing that you are never what you think you are. You can use those ideas because it's the best estimate you've made so far, but it's recognizing that you're never really settling on anything, that you're always in that state of process for sure. I'm going to pass it over to Andrew now.
Yeah, and even with that realization of making your best guess, like that best guess that I'm constantly making can be so far off. Just because it's my best guess doesn't mean it's like close to correct. It's just based on my perspective and assumptions. And it could be like in another fucking galaxy from something a little bit even slightly more accurate, which is always interesting. And how often, like with the immediate judgments or when the idea comes up, you know, how it'll be uh, thought of in a certain way, and then, how much it's bought into will determine how seriously I take it and just how much impact it has. And I'm kind of doing that thing now where I start talking as I'm trying to like get my point back, and I try and keep talking and make some semblance of sense. And then oftentimes it'll come back. And so when I have that immediate response to something, even like that, where I'm like, oh, and I can sometimes feel the buildup of like, oh, don't forget, it's right there. Keep what you're gonna say. And I can feel certain buildup. I can have this perspective like this looks a certain way, or this I'm perceiving this in a certain way, but there's no guarantee of how that's being perceived anywhere else. And so even when we make the immediate judgments in the moment of how things are going on, like even that isn't even close. And so like I'll try to control the way that I act, the things that I say, the way that I say things, how I bring things across, the points that I make in this through this idea that an illusion that control exists. Like I can control how this is looked at, how I'm heard, how I'm understood. And so if I any sort of resistance I have to anything that I'm doing or the way that I'm acting or the things that I'm saying is just my own idea of how it's coming across or how it's being looked at. But that idea is as inaccurate as any fucking best guess. Is someone talking out loud next to you, taking and saying some random shit, and you could just be like, "Oh yeah, that means something about me," and you can just assume that. It's the same thing as listening to, your perspectives, your self criticisms, your self judgments. It's like that's as equally as close to reality as any random person saying any random thing about you. But we don't like, I don't think of it in that way because it's so familiar, that perspective. It's like, no, this is who or what I am. And there's like, subtle variations of those perspectives, but it's still like the baseline of it, just because it's familiar, just because it's something I've done for a while, doesn't mean that it's actually even close to the reality of how things are, which is just absolutely mind blowing. Like how long that perspective's been maintained. But at the same time, it hasn't, because it's still just me maintaining some fragmented perspective right now. Like I then have the idea that I've had this same idea for years. And that's not even the case because it's varies every fucking moment. So even that is a fucking illusion that I've had this idea since, I was 12, 13, 14. It's like, which one? Which idea exactly? Is it the one you had 5 minutes ago or the one you have right now or the one you had yesterday? Like, because there's not even a fucking semblance of a continuation of the idea, which is so funny.
Yeah, exactly. What with that exact idea, like exactly like that, like nothing's changed, right? Like you haven't changed at all. Your perspective, like it's just so funny. Like we are not stagnant beings, but we can give ourselves the illusion that we are just by maintaining this story, and it's just easy to do. But it comes down to that again, that recognition that we're not the story, that the story's never the truth. Without that, we're fucked. And I mean this wholeheartedly because again, the whole motivation industry is built on this self-improvement. A large part of our coaching industries are built on this as well. That you just need to tell yourself a better story. You just need to focus on positive thoughts. You just need to switch that narrative to an empowering one. And you don't recognize that you just enabled that addiction. And that's what we're doing. And we have a lot of people pushing the addiction and profiting from it because it's an addiction. It's an addiction to think about your life like it gives you a sense of control rather than to be in your life where you have influence. Because influence is very unsatisfying. Sense of control, though, you can get really hyped up on that. I'm going to be a fucking millionaire within a year. I know. I used to be in that industry. It's the kind of coaching I used to do once upon a time. I get how much you can just convince yourself that the thoughts in your head define your life. And the problem is they just define your illusion. Your life is actually the consequence of living in that illusion. It's all the things that you're missing. It's all the relationships that are suffering because you're in your head. It's all the lessons that are going by because you're in your head.
Yeah, and like, oh my gosh, like how often we do it and all of the things that we're missing, but like to that point, the satisfaction isn't there in the same way, but it's like a continued replenishing of things just because you're continuing to go and do, but it's a different sort of feeling experience. Like, and there can even be variations and shifts of just how much we feel like we get from those ideas, from those accomplishments, from those things that we do. Like, even going into, like, training for the New York City Marathon that I'm running, this weekend. Yeah, it's like I'm excited, I'm pumped, but
I
I've had
just
a
want to
number.
stop right there and just say, everybody who's watching this right now, can we get a big shout out for Andrew? Because he's worked like a motherfucker for this marathon forever now. And I don't know about you, but I'm tired of him making me feel lazy. No, I'm just being irresponsible. I'm just joking, buddy. But yeah, let's give him a big shout out to Andrew in the comment section if we can. Fucking great job, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And it was funny because, like, what I was gonna say was with and how many people have said how, oh, that's gonna be such a great feel, such a good accomplishment, such a big accomplishment, such an incredible thing to do. And it's kind of hit me how much we do certain things to feel better about ourselves, you know? And like I've even come across because now I get more running content here and there, like people talking about the reasons that they get into running and like kind of how symbolic it can be of, someone saying something like, oh, I've been going through like running cured my this, running cured my depression, running cured my anxiety. And I guess it's like exercise can do that. And even like not focusing on those things can help with that. And so anything that does that, but how much, I don't know, we do certain things and have this sort of buildup of, oh, I'm gonna feel better because I accomplished this, or feel great because I accomplished this, or whatever. Like, that sort of feeling of feeling better about yourself for doing a certain thing. And I'm like, I'm not really thinking about that. I know it'll feel good to finish it and like have done it and all those things, but like there would be much more, even recently, like almost additional pressure on myself. Like part of me barely even remembers that I've been training for a marathon. I don't know if that makes sense, but it kind of hit me today. Like I was looking at my watch or whatever thing, and it said like I've run like 500 miles this year and most of it being in the last month I ran 130 or something. And like part of me doesn't even remember it, or hasn't, because I haven't been thinking of, oh, I'm training for a marathon. It's not like this is a part of my life where I'm training for a marathon. It's like I'm doing all different sorts of things and I'm getting my runs in as often as I can, and had to take some weeks off, but it's been more of like probably the most relaxed I've ever been through doing something, I guess, because I haven't thought like, oh, I gotta do this, get here. Part of that is because I'm not trying to like get a really good time or anything. I'm just doing it for the sake of doing it. It's like, I don't know. I saw some videos last year. It looked like a fun time. And that's literally the reason I started running, was because the New York City Marathon last year looked like a lot of fun to run in. So I was like, well, it would be better to train for it than to just show up and not train for it. So I'll do that too. But yeah, like just how often we'll hold on to, yeah.
I wanted to say I just love that it's not a race. I love the fact that it's just run. Can you finish it? That's more or less it. And it's just like, take your time, however long it takes you. Fucking love that. I love that because if you take that attitude, then that's just like, right. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm not trying to prove anything, which means you're going to get more out of it because you're doing it for you. I fucking love that. Whereas, a race, something that's competitive, and it's not like people don't go into marathons treating it like a race, because somebody's got to finish first, right? Somebody's got to be at the front, and so it's really tempting to want to be that fucking person, but why? Why? I mean, if you are cool, if it's just the result of your training and all the attention and whatnot that you've put into it, and how much you've been, working on this thing, great. But if it's a burning need, like what a shitty memory. Could you imagine running for fucking, what is it, 20 some odd miles with this? Oh God, they're catching up. Could you imagine? That would suck so bad.
And I've heard people reference it as a race, like, "Oh, these are you gotta get your racing shoes." And even that, like, I've only heard it a couple of times, but as I've heard it, it sounded kind of funny just because I and the perspective of just because and there's so many people, there's like 50,000 people who run it every year or something. So, like, yeah, and I'm not in a spot where there's even gonna be, like, close to the, top whatever, and they have a podium for this, but it's always, like, there's like, hardcore professional, like, Olympians who are probably running it, so majority of people, it is very much just even those who do have certain times they're trying to beat or whatever, it's not beating someone else, it's just themselves that they're working on, going against or whatever. So it's not competitive in the same sense, but then I guess there can be that same sort of competition with yourself. But for the most part, it is just it's a certain distance and just finishing it is, a accomplishment or a win or whatever. So it's kind of cool that even in, you know, as competitive as things are these days, how it can still be, something like this where it doesn't have to be the most competitive thing. And I guess anything has that opportunity. Also, like any game we play, any sport we play has that opportunity. But yeah, and it's just how you take it. And since not having that sort of burning need to accomplish me because I did grow up playing sports trying to be the best, the fast. Like I was always fast, like sprinting wise, not necessarily long distance because I didn't really do that. And I always like had to be the fastest person. Like if I was so used to being the fastest person in the room, on the team, whatever, that if I wasn't, it would be like immediately I would go berserk with like training and shit to like be the fat, And so there's been points throughout training or whatever where I've been like, "Oh gosh, am I leaving stuff in the tank? I not proving myself? Should I be trying to beat 4 hours? Like, oh, if I just keep a pace that I know I can for a while, I could probably even, do 350 or 345." And those thoughts kind of go through and like, "Oh yeah, but that's not like how does that actually play out? Like what is that in terms of, prioritizing my reality right now? Like is that prioritizing my reality right now? Is that going to be prioritizing the race or is that just prioritizing the finish? Like you can run 26 miles and have the prioritization be just when you cross the finish line, like the whole thing. Whereas, yeah, I haven't been taking that approach and I'm like fucking excited to be looking around, going to be pretty baked, going to be, bring some snacks with me. I know people give out food along the way, just like doing my best to have an enjoyable time because I have trained for it and I'm gonna do a pace that's probably less than I could. And so yeah, just enjoying it. I'll still be running, but yeah, doing my best to enjoy the 26 miles instead of trying to finish it.
You must do me a favor and just roll a good sized joint and then like put it in your shorts. And then as you're running, at some point, as the bake starts to come off a bit, just start puffing on it and take a photo of yourself while you're running and puffing on a joint. That'll be awesome. That'll make a great story
I
for
will.
sure.
I will. I will. Maybe
um,
I'll bring a
talking about
couple extras.
lack of
Pass 'em.
competition, though, one of the things I love about our retreats are the fact that whatever games are there, nobody gives a shit about who's winning or the score or anything. Like there's nothing serious about it. Like we've played games of pool where we've just switched sides halfway through because nobody was really paying attention. Games of ping pong that just never ended because there was no score being kept. Things like that. And it's just because there's no need. The point is the playing. If you remember that the point is the playing, right? Like, isn't it funny? Like we cheer for who wins when really with the times that we get the most excited is when somebody on the field does something fucking incredible. Right? Like, that's the part of watching sports that gets me where I'm like, "That guy actually fucking do that?" Like, just watching, like, people, hockey players, for example, like, the way they dance on the ice, the way they move, you're just like, "Holy shit." And in some moments where it's really tight, you're like, "That was fucking incredible." But how much of those moments are lost just because it's the team that you're not cheering for? Right? And you're missing this expression of human potential just because they're not the team that you're cheering for. And it ruins so much of the experience because of the way that we just look at it. Speaking of retreats, I wanted to throw this out there because it is now November 1st. I'm very excited about this. We are coming up on the November, the Netherlands retreat. November 11th. This is going to be great. There are still a few tickets left. I'm excited to say that we have some third floor tickets left. Anybody who hasn't been to one of our retreats, this is a rare 9-day retreat. This is the full experience. We've only done this twice before. It was our first two retreats. Everything else after that's been a mini retreat. These 9-day experiences are transformational, to say the least. I can't recommend enough that if you can join us, do check out the details, dualistiCunity.com. We have some tickets right now that are available for less than $2,000. That's the full 9 days for less than $2,000. All your meals, all your substances, all the time with us, chill in the hot tub, come for a walk, listen to some classical guitar. We've also got some yoga going on. I'm going to teach some Wing Chun. Likely we might get into a little bit of Reiki. It's going to be a fucking rad time. There's still some time left to get your tickets. We're going to be picking up everybody at the Amsterdam airport at 4 p.m. on the 11th. We're all getting into a big bus. We're going to go for a nice long ride across the Netherlands, which means we're going to see the countryside. We're going to have some laughs. We're going to have some chats. We're going to smoke some weed because, of course, we'll be picking that up too. And then we're going to get to the lodge and have a great dinner and start hanging out. By day 2, by day 3, you're going to start to feel like, oh, everybody's here for very much the same purpose I am, to just be themselves. Nobody's asking anything of me. Nobody's trying to influence me. There's no fucking schedule, it seems like, and that's it. There's no schedule. It really is just the space that you need to practice all of the lessons that you've been learning, all the lessons that you've been struggling with, all of the things that you've learned about yourself that you just can't seem to master because everybody's pushing and pulling you and doing this. This is just the space for you to recognize how far you've come, to come to terms with it, and then to go back into your life afterwards with a renewed sense of self, real self, not the idea of yourself, but who you are here and now, that you can face your life and be relaxed. And you will be just as efficient, if not more so, and you will get more out of each and every moment. So definitely consider joining us in the Netherlands. It's so worthwhile.
Fuck yes. Yeah. The opportunity and just that space. Like, how often in our lives do we get that space with no one telling us what to do, even who to be, the right way to act, the right way to look, the right way to sound, and responding to each and every move that we have with some sort of thing. Because the opportunity at the retreats is to be left with yourself. Because when you're in society, in a world, there's so many pushes and pulls and expectations, both you have of yourself and other people have, and all of this stuff. And really, it just comes down to you, though. And it's always just coming down to you. But when there's so many other things going on, so many people expecting things of themselves and therefore expecting things of you in response, it's almost harder to see that all of the expectations, the judgments, the thoughts are really stemming from you, like they're rooted in you. So the retreats are this space to realize that. And that's life-changing. Like, if anything about any of this is life-changing, it's the most empowering thing you can realize, that everything is stemming from you. All of the fears, psychological suffering, the doubts, the perspectives, the resistance to whatever's going on, like, it stems from you. And so it's not on anyone or anything to act a certain way in response to you. And so to get 9 days where you're able to see that, oh shit, yeah, it's coming from me. It's coming from me. Like, you go back, and that's the beauty of the longer retreats, the full week, the full 9 days. Is the mini retreats are incredible. And that's like, first half of the full retreat, where everyone's settled in and feeling good by the end, ready to make moves back. But maybe a couple more days would be nice. At the longer retreats, it's like, settled in early in the first half of the week, and then you're just settled and just yourself and just relaxed. And then you get to enjoy that in a dope spot in the middle of the Netherlands here on a big estate with a bunch of cool people and good food and substances and all this fun stuff to do. And then by the end of that, like, all right, this has been fucking awesome, but I am ready to dig back into some shit to see what I'm capable of, to see what I can do, realizing that it's stemming from me. So if I don't have all these expectations and judgments and thoughts and fears about myself stemming from myself, then I can kind of do a lot more things, or at least try a lot more things, or kind of do anything, and then start finding out what you're capable of. But yeah, so anyway, be awesome to see you. We got about a week and a half, and we'll be
Fuck yeah,
in
we do.
Netherlands.
And I wanted to throw out a few more details here quickly. We are going to be in the Netherlands, which means that the legal age for you to ingest cannabis and other substances is 18 years old. This is a rare opportunity because normally we are in the States where it's 21 or in Canada where it's 19. So this is an opportunity for anybody who is 18 or 19 years old. If you want to come out, smoke some weed, enjoy yourself, and not be legally judged for something that you're doing anyway, this is an opportunity for you to do that. The other thing is that in the Netherlands, psychedelic truffles are legal and readily available. And so we will be picking some up and they will be at the retreat. And so you will have an opportunity if you have any questions about a psychedelic experience, if you have, I guess, if you have some reservations in terms of having your first experience, or you've had an experience in the past and it didn't go well for you, or you just don't know what you're getting into and you would like to have some kind of a guide, this is the perfect opportunity for you to do that. Everything in terms of the psychedelic experience is minimal. We are not trying to quote unquote trip, but there is a state of relaxation that does come from microdosing. And that is something that we do utilize at certain points in the retreat. It's optional, it's not mandatory, but if it's something that you've had questions about and want to experience, this is definitely the place to do it, because you're going to be with a lot of people who have had a lot of experience and are willing to just be there with you. That's it. So again, tickets, dualisticunity.com. Check it out. If you can't come to the Netherlands, then we have two mini retreats coming up as well. One in February in Virginia Beach and another one in April in California. And I believe California is going to be our largest mini retreat. I think that comes with 14 guests. I think something like that. So that's going to be really cool. And it's a really nice area. Virginia Beach too. I'm stoked that we're going to be right on the water. So you're going to see me frolicking up and down the beach, especially at night, because I absolutely love that shit. So anybody who would like to join us for a conversation like this in person, there are events. There will be more events, including a camping trip next summer. That'd be nice, except that it's fall and it'd be cold, and I know Andrew would not enjoy fall camping as one of his first camping experiences for sure. But one day we should do a Dualistic Unity ice fishing trip just for the sake of it. It'd be fun.
Oh yeah. No, no, I appreciate that. The soft, comfortable city boy. It'll harden up, don't you worry. But yeah, the retreat in regards to the truffles and whatnot, I think the retreat's got to be the best place to try any of that stuff for the first time. Try it, period, take it, period, have it, period. Like, they're kind of curated to be the optimal spot. Like, they're not curated or planned to be anything, but because of that, they are arguably the best place to do. So things like that. I don't even know if we can say psychedelics. Probably, yeah. Why not? Psychedelics on
For sure.
at a
It's legal
retreat.
in the Netherlands. We can
Yeah,
absolutely talk about psychedelics.
yeah. I know. Sometimes, yeah. I don't know why. Sometimes I hesitate. Well, I'm on TikTok over here, so but there's barely anyone on it, so it doesn't matter. So yeah, that experience of just being able to be with a bunch of people who have a bunch of experience and have been through plenty of stuff. And that's the thing, is it's not as you said, it's not this hardcore, like, trip our fucking nuts off type thing. It's like subtle amplification to help amplify the relaxation a little bit, like a little more chill, and it's almost like not even noticeable towards the end because it's just how you wake up. Like, and you wonder like, "Oh, is it still? Am I still on some mushrooms?" And just because it's not doing it for you, like, you're doing it, and so as you realize, "Oh, I am," it's just I'm doing it, then you don't even need them as much because you see that it's a way that you can live. You see it as an option. And how often, like we were talking about this, I think on Patreon yesterday, how often we don't see certain ways of acting or living as options until we do, until we do. And whether it's someone acting in that way or seeing it ourselves through some psychedelic experience, it's like everything's kind of showing you that there are different options if you're willing to look. But as we get more and more normalized, more and more trying to fit in and be like everyone else, there aren't as many opportunities to see other ways of living or experiencing things. And so, whether it's a psychedelic trip, whether it's hanging out with people who don't have so many expectations of themselves, whether it's at a retreat or all three, the opportunity is there. And I think the retreat kind of hits on all of those opportunities to see reality just a little bit differently that can then be enough to change the way you see everything, the way you see yourself, and the way that, you know, the environment that you're living in, no matter where you are.
And the way you see us, hopefully. That is very much, I think, my favorite part about the retreat is that everybody who comes to the retreat usually goes, "Oh, you're not what I thought you were at all." I love that shit. That is exactly the point. I think that is exactly the point. That is exactly why it is so important not to be that fucking jerk on a podium, speaking spiritual truths. Like, it's important for you to, use the podium, sure, so people can hear you, but then come down from the podium, give somebody else a chance to speak, go mingle, shoot the shit, have a good time, have a drink, relax, that kind of thing. But it's just that. Like, it's just we're just human. We're just human. And it's so easy to look at somebody who is saying the things that resonate with you and then to idealize them in a way that you want to be. So we talk about letting go. We talk about having faith in yourself. We talk about being present. We talk about getting out of your own way. We talk about these things, and people will listen to it and they'll go, "Yeah, yeah, I feel that. Wow, that's so true. You guys have to you have to be masters of this. You are in fact the end of the road that I'm thinking in my head that I'm going to get to." And it's that simple. It really is. And it's just because we have an end of the road that we're trying to get to. And so it's very easy to look at others as we do all the time and project our fears and our desires onto them, right? To oversimplify, to go, "You have it." I've had people so many times say, "Well, yeah, but this is easy for you to let go of what you want, to deal with things going sideways, to watch your life just fucking fall into pieces. Oh, this is easy for you." No, it's just as hard. It's just that I prioritize grace and acceptance. That's it. It just looks easy because I'm not resisting it. Right. That's it.
Yeah, because moment to moment, even as you go through it, or maybe you feel like, oh, I've been doing it a while. I should be, you know, have the perspective like, oh, I should have overcome this by now. Should have been able to deal with this by now. But it's not that the more you do it, the easier it gets. It's just the more you do it, the more you do it, and it's like the better you get at it. So it doesn't change. It's kind of like I mean, I don't know if this is comparable, but, like, if you are running and you start running more, start pushing yourself more, like, you're still going the same distances. It's just that it gets easier for you because you keep doing it. You keep being willing to do that. But if you start avoiding it, if you start buying into something else, if you stop running, like, it's not gonna you're gonna stop where you're at, with going through certain things, but it doesn't change the fact that going through it is still going through it. And sometimes, and the going through it shifts too. Like going through certain perspectives, like that changes as well as you go through more, as you're more willing to take responsibility for things, as you're more willing to, you know, let go of certain perspectives. It's like it all kind of ties in together. And so it's still the moment to moment, like, okay, I want this to be a certain way. Oh, it's not that way. Okay. And you go back and forth with that. But yeah, it's interesting how people will maintain certain perspectives of people. And I do it too. Like fuck. And it's so wild how you can be focused on yourself and not recognize that everyone's going through like possibly the same thing you're going through, and like without a disconnect, like everyone is going through situationally the same sort of moment, the same experience at all times. And if I'm caught up in my perspective of that experience, then it's going to cut me off from seeing that no, this is all my experience, like the entire thing. And that includes everyone that I'm seeing or interacting with or feeling, all of it. But if I'm looking at myself and thinking that, oh, I got to figure this out for me, it just cuts me off from the realization that I'm not alone in it, but I am. And so my response to it is where the influence lies, at least for myself. So if I'm going through stuff or shit and I'm not afraid of it, or I'm not worried about it, or I'm not thinking that it shouldn't be happening, or that I need to get rid of it, then I'm able to continue looking at myself, interacting with myself, and having influence right now. But if I'm focused on myself, trying to get to some other spot or be somewhere else or act some other way, then I'm never going to see every part of me going through the exact same variations of the exact same thing.
That's why I like our groups, honestly. It's because a lot of people come to our groups and they assume that, you know, well, everybody else has an easy time talking. I'm just nervous. I have this anxiety, and then all of a sudden somebody else is like, I think everybody else has an easy time talking. I'm experiencing some anxiety, and you're like, hold up, I was just thinking that. And you really, when you're listening to people talk about not the details of their life, but the underlying lessons behind them, the underlying challenges behind them in terms of being yourself versus trying to be something else. You really start to recognize that, yeah, there's an underlying lesson that we're all going through. It's just that the conversation never revolves around authenticity, right? Like that's really what the difficulty is so little of our discussions day to day really revolve around authenticity. Sure, we'll bitch that people aren't authentic, but we never talk about what it is to truly be authentic. Because that is a path all its own. It's like we have a concept of authentic, you know, and it's not. It's just like any other concept, right? It's not the reality. There is a reality to being authentic, to being yourself. It's just not trying to be something. And so there is a path there that requires you to let go of a lot of your assumptions, a lot of your ideas.
Fucking A, I've definitely maintained some idea of authentic, I think. And so there's a fight to whatever I'm feeling or going through, like this shouldn't be happening. But authenticity is just like not thinking you should be any different. Like that's just it. And then just continuing to act and continuing to do things and not have the thoughts like, oh, shouldn't be feeling this way, shouldn't be acting this way, shouldn't be doing this thing, shouldn't be whatever. It's just the moment to moment to moment. No, there's never anything else I should be doing other than what I'm doing. And through that, there's a depth of relaxation where even when you're not relaxed, it's not the thought of I should be relaxed right now. It's just good with yourself, and not good with yourself in order to get to a better spot or be seen in a different way or be like feel a different way. It's just what you are. Like, that's it. There's not this sort of like positive undercurrent to it. There's not like this, oh, I'm better at all the things that I want to be better at because I'm being authentic now. It's no, you are what you are who you are where you are right now. How much resistance do you have to this experience right now? This thing that you're going through, whatever. This moment to moment. It's not even a thing that you're ever going through. It's just exactly what you are, what you're going through right now. And so it's what you are right now. Can I be good with that? Can I be okay with that? Can I just continue on with whatever plays out, however it plays out? And that's authenticity. So it's not this, yeah, because I've always had this sort of like it's good, being authentic is the right way to be. It's kind of like you're kind of always being authentic, even when you're fighting it, even when you're going through stuff, even when you're resisting being what's going on. So authenticity, fuck, dude, you can't even not be authentic. You can't not be authentic. Holy Christ.
But that's it. That that right there is a point that we are all struggling with, is to understand being ourselves. But it is not a significant discussion in our society, despite it being the cornerstone of all of our existences, despite it being the foundation of all of our experiences. And everything we do comes from that. Everything we do comes from that. If you want to look at the world, look at a world trying to be something, which is why it's never paying attention to what it's doing. So caught up in tunnel vision, so caught up in progress, so caught up in trying, to advance technologically, and we're forgetting the foundation of existence for us, which is our relationship with ourself. Everything we build, whether it's a building, whether it's a government, whether it's an economic structure, is going to be distorted by our relationship with ourself. Everything. That's where corruption and greed and selfishness all comes into play. It comes from people having a relationship with themselves wherein there is a lack. There is this idea that they must be something, therefore they must get something, which always comes at the expense of someone else, because there's no empathy when you have tunnel vision.
No, not at all. And like it so obviously drives everything that we're doing, like trying to be something. Because if you weren't trying to be something different than what you are, this crazy ass lack of sensitivity game that we're playing focused on this specific thing, not looking or considering anything else, not taking in any considerations, just having that one track mind, like in the Lorax, the one slur. How bad can I be? I'm just out here for me. I'm just doing me. Like, and that is such a finite focus, and that tunnel vision you won't be able to see any of the impacts that you're having. So it, of course, it stems from that desire to be something else. Like we'll say to be more, but it's just to be different than what I am right now. Because being more is just an assumption too. And there's no guarantee. Like you could have this great idea with all these things and be like, I'm going to make, $1 billion from this invention and put all of this into it, and then it doesn't play out, and then it's like if it were to play out you would have felt great. If it doesn't play out you feel terrible. And so it's still just as uncertain in terms of you trying to be more. It's like if you don't reach your idea of more, then you're less by default, like no matter what. So instead of thinking, it just comes down to thinking you should be different than you are. And like we have a society full of people trying to be different than they are, trying to get somewhere else, trying to be something else, telling themselves a story, telling myself a story about what I think I am and then what I should be, how I am responding versus how I should respond, how I am acting versus how I should be acting. And just continuing to tell myself, make this assumption that I know that I have control. And if I just act a certain way, then what? Like, then what? Then more people are going to like me. Then I'm going to accept myself more if I reach that point. Like, I don't even, it's hard to even come up with a good reason as to why the continued judgment continues to happen and the continued assumption that I should be different based on no evidence whatsoever. Like, no evidence whatsoever that that's a viable that makes any sense or there's any guarantee any which way of anything. Because if there's no guarantee, then it gets a lot harder to think you should be different than you are, and then you're left with just, like, uncertainty, and you have nothing but the ability to be yourself and authentic. Because there aren't all of these reasons telling you why you shouldn't be, that you were so sure of, because you can't be sure of any of it.
That's really it, right? Isn't it funny? Like so much of what we talk about in terms of like morals and virtues, like having courage, having integrity, being honest, being yourself, all of that, they've become concepts. Now we look for the appearance of being honest and the appearance of being caring, the appearance of being compassionate. It's not about necessarily actually having these virtues, it's about how we appear more often than not. And even when we are doing nice things for other people, if it's under the guise of how we're being perceived, whether we want to accept that or not, it's not really helping other people. It's helping ourselves. Right. And this is why I say, like, we so focus on the actions, not recognizing that many of our actions are just results. A lot of what we're doing is just a result of something else that we're doing underneath, in terms of beating ourselves up, telling ourselves we're not enough. And so we have this game going on inside of us, and then we act it out in the real world. We act it out in our relationships. We act it out in the people we meet and the things that we do and the choices we make. But it's like, oh, I have a problem with alcoholism. It's like, do you? Do you? Or is your alcoholism the result of you having a problem with your life, with existence as a whole, with whatever the fuck is happening around you, and how you are not able to just be? That you're constantly trying to be something, that there's this constant pressure, this constant judgment, this constant fucking aching in your head that makes you want to fucking drown it out. So often we look at things like that's the problem, like the current opioid crisis. Obviously the problem is opioids. Is it? Or is it the society and the mentality that drives that society that's wrecking people so much that they need some escape that's literally just brutalizing them? They just want to tune it all out. They're already suffering, so they're like, well, if I'm going to suffer, I may as well just be high. Right? And that's the thing, like numbing ourselves. Oh no, the problem is the numbing agent. Responsibility. It really just comes down to this underlying, if you can't accept yourself, you're going to be constantly suffering. Which is why, going back to what we were discussing at the beginning of this video, it's recognizing that the underlying current is fear and control. So much of what we do, it comes down to fear and control. And it's not even fear and control based on something good. It's not fear and control like, oh shit, there's a bear coming towards me, I better sharpen a stick. Like it's not that kind of fear and control. It's that person's looking at me, they're judging me, fuck, I bet you they don't like what I'm wearing, I'm gonna go buy a new suit. That kind of fear and control, that drives so much of our life. And it's just fear based on the idea that your idea of yourself is the truth, so it must be protected. If you don't understand that your idea of you is not you, then your brain, your body, everything about you will react as if the idea of yourself being assaulted is your body being assaulted. And that's where we are. That's how fucking lost we are in that idea of ourselves. That somebody telling you that you're wrong causes a physiological change, because you actually feel threatened. You actually feel diminished as a person. Your body hasn't changed. Nothing's changed. All of a sudden, it's just your idea of yourself that's been threatened. That's it. And yet you will feel like you are actually in danger. And it's just because of that overcommitment to your idea of yourself being yourself. All it is why I was saying in the Patreon group yesterday that when I'm having a conversation with somebody and they give me feedback and they're like, got to tell you this and this and this and this, maybe I think you're a little bit too, confident, or you come across a bit too arrogant, things like that. I listen and I watch for things that trigger. I watch for things that make me feel uncomfortable because it's something I haven't been willing to look at. There are opportunities, right? I've had people tell me, I've had life coaching clients tell me, like, when I first met you, I really thought you were arrogant. And after a while, I just realized, like, no, you're just really comfortable with the things that you've you've questioned in your life. You're just really comfortable, saying things that you're sure of in terms of your own experience. And that's exactly it. It was always from my own experience. Right? But I could look at that and go, "Oh my god, am I coming across as arrogant? Oh, that would really ruin my image." Instead of just going, "Huh, I can see how that's coming across. Let me look at that." Right? And that's it. Not for how am I being perceived or how can I change how I'm being perceived, but because I'd really want to know. Am I being egotistical? I should really look at that, and just for my own benefit. Just for my own benefit. So that was more or less it. We are coming to the end of our episode here. I just wanted to say before we wrap up in about 5 to 6 minutes, we're going to be continuing on this afternoon because it is an unexpected Wednesday episode of Raw. So if you are watching this, join us this afternoon, Wednesday, 6 p.m. We do our free public groups. You can join us any Wednesday, though. So, regardless of when you're listening to this, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, we do a free public group. You can join us. Just go to dualisticunity.com, click on live events, and you will find the registration form. It's totally free. But again, we're here for another 5 minutes. And then this afternoon, we do a TikTok live at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, free public group at 6, and a tier 1 call at 7. Wednesdays are always awesome. So if you can join us, please do. And if you can't join us, that's just fine. Again, just like the events and the retreats and whatnot, do what you can when you can. That's the best that you can do. There is no right path. There is no wrong path. There is just the best that you can do. And the more that you are willing to just have faith in your ability to learn from each and every step, the more you will learn from each and every step. That's it. That's all there is. That's the only answer there is. Yours. But just don't hold on to any of them and you'll keep growing.
Well said. Yeah, just keep paying attention when you can't relax or you can't feel or you feel like you're doing something wrong. Just keep paying attention to what's going on and recognize that you have an idea. It's not complete. It's not fully correct. It's not what's actually going on. Like it's not actually you. And so it's interesting how over time we've gotten so attached to that we have that bodily response when someone says something about us, has an idea, a thought about an idea that we then also have an idea about, and it's like my idea of myself and their idea of me doesn't even match up, but they're having a judgment about that. And so because I take it so personally, I don't even want to look at it. And if I do take it very personally, it's usually because it's something I could see in myself. Like it's almost like I already kind of am aware of it, and that's why it hits. If it doesn't hit, then it's something that I don't even necessarily consider, and then I guess it's still important to look at it because then it's the opportunity to see things from another point of view, from another perspective, because we can only see what we see. We can only know what we know. Like we can't know something that we don't recognize or look at or don't understand. And so when those perspectives are shared, it's like the more you can hear it without taking it personally, like both recognizing that they're saying something and even just taking it in as reality, like it's reality talking to reality as opposed to this means something about me. It's just here's a valid perspective from myself about something and I can take that into account, acting a certain way, being a certain way, doing a certain thing. It's like you can hear it without it hitting home to the point that it compresses you or crushes you. But it is fascinating, like how fascinating of a phenomenon it is that it feel like there's a feeling to it, that we're so tied into that. And so, yeah, over the last year, I've definitely gained an appreciation for how fucking deep the perspective, the perception of division runs. Like how and it's like it's both so deep, but such a thin fucking filter over things 'cause it's through the perspective that I'm just this, but like oh, man, and I'm just an idea about this. It's not even just this, it's like I'm an idea about this that is then influenced by all the things that happen. and I am this thing and just this, and so, yeah, gain much more of an appreciation for how deep that perspective runs and that perception of division.
Hell yeah. In fact, that's a pretty good point that we made in our social anxiety and worry workshop, which is available on the website for anybody who's interested in it. It's totally worthwhile. But just that idea that, and I've had this conversation with clients, for example, sometimes when I was life coaching, I would take a client to a coffee shop or something like that. And they would express like, I feel like everybody in here is judging me. I'm worried about how people perceive me. And I would look around and go, well, what if they are? Like, and what exactly does that do? Does it ruin the taste of your coffee? Like, how much power are you giving these people if they are judging you? Like, none of your experience has to be about that reaction. It's just so you're so used to giving into it. You're so used to giving into it. And that's all it is. That's all it is. And over time, after you've given into it enough, you think that that's the natural reaction. Well, isn't everybody afraid of judgment? Yeah, that doesn't mean everybody reacts to it that way, right? That's it. Everybody's afraid of judgment. Not everybody responds to it with quite so much fear, in terms of just reactions. Like, oh my God, they're judging me. Ah! Whereas if somebody else is like, oh wow, they're judging me. Hi, how you doing? And that's more or less my response when I am being stared at by somebody across the room. I tend to wave. And what I have found is that often that person wasn't staring at me at all. They were just kind of staring into the distance, and I was taking up the distance. And that was pretty much it. So that's often the case. And then they'll wave and they're like, oh fuck, I was staring at that person. And we've done that ourselves. So it's all in good fun. This has been a fun episode. I've really enjoyed it. Always fun to start with a rant. Again, thank you for joining us, everyone. We will be at the Netherlands retreat very soon. For everybody who's joining us, I'm going to be sending out the food requirements form later on today just to find out what you can and cannot eat. And we'll see you soon. Thanks, man. This has been a lot of fun.
It's been a blast. Yeah, appreciate everyone for tuning in, and we'll talk to you later today.